Alright guys, so here's another video where a customer sent in a module and key for a 2015 Macan. Right here is where I am, before I open the customer's package. That's a use key that we have, just in case the customer did not send in a key for us to program. I'm going to already prepare or reflash a use key that we can use in the programming if the customer is requesting it. So what you just saw me do there is I've showed you that the key was currently assigned or programmed to another vehicle. It was used, it was learned, and it displayed the VIN number. What I'm doing here now is reflashing the key. After I reflash it, then I'll show you again here that I've wiped all the data completely and ready for programming. Alright, so you see the programmer now is resetting, and it says that the reset was successful. Now what I'll do is I'll pull it off here, pull off the connections. And rescan the key and then show you here that the key is now not learned. There's no VIN number attached to it. 315 megahertz. So now the use key is reflashed and cleared and available for programming to the customer's module if the customer is requesting our key. What you see me doing here is I'm doing the same thing with another one of our keys, just in case the customer has the keyless go function. I'm going to show you here that it's learned. Okay, there's the VIN number, and then I'm also going to reflash this one as well. Showing you here that the reset on this particular key was successful, and then now I'll just take another quick reading with the key tool just to make sure that it was successful. Okay, showing here now that the VIN number has been wiped, all the data has been wiped. The key is now in a not learned state. So now I have two keys that's ready for programming should I need it. So this is the customer's module that was shipped to us. At this point, I'm just going to make sure we don't display any of his personal information or address. So I'm going to go ahead and get that covered up and then continue on with the programming sequence. Sorry this part took so long. I had to go find some paper and tape. Also guys, when you're sending over the module, just make sure, just as this customer did, that you have some good cushioning in there. It is your BCM, so you want to make sure that it's not damaged during shipment. Alright, so I believe it's just outside of camera there. But I think I pulled out, yes, if you can see it behind that Amazon package, the key was separate. So the customer did send in a key, and there is the BCM module. At this point I'm inspecting it, making sure of the frequency that you probably cannot see. Okay, you can see it a little bit there. It's 315 megahertz, which based on the model and year, I pretty much knew that's what I was looking for. Now at this point I'm inspecting the key that the customer sent in. I did at this point realize that it was an aftermarket key. Aftermarket keys are not guaranteed, which was discussed with the customer. Should the key fail to be programmed to the module, at that point the customer would need to purchase our key, which is why I prepared the previous keys just in case this aftermarket key did not program in. So I just tested that key and it looked good. It's saying that it wasn't learned, it was a correct frequency, 315. So it looks promising at this point. And now I'm going to start with the programming. Before I start with the programming, what I do is usually I just do a quick test, just so that we can show the customer. Okay, this is a BCM tester. When I plug it in here, hopefully I'll get it up close enough for you guys to kind of see it. What this does is it will test to see if a key works with that particular BCM. Okay, and when I mean work, there's two functions. There's a remote function. So right now I'm pressing on the remote. As you can see, the little indicators, the LED lighting up. So I'm pressing the remote, and on the tester, you see where the light is red. It will indicate green here if the remote functions were working with this particular BCM. So with a program key, it should be lighting up green anytime I'm pressing any of the remote functions, but it did not. So here, that little test button that I just selected, it is now testing the ignition. So it's testing to see if this key would actually turn on the ignition or start the vehicle. And you see the green and red light flashing. In a second here, it will stop. And it stopped on red, which I'll zoom in here or bring a little closer. Red indicates that it failed ignition, which means this key is not programmed. It will not work via the remote for the unlock and lock of the doors, nor will it start the vehicle. So at this point we know that, or we just confirmed what we already know, was that this is a blank key. It's not currently programmed to this vehicle. We've confirmed that. We've also tested the BCM as well. Alrighty, so we're popping the case open at this point. Now we have access to the internals, the internal circuitry of the BCM. Right now I'm looking it over, determining what type of chip is on the BCM, just making sure that it is a chip that can be programmed. Okay, and that's EEPROM chip, which is the chip that houses or stores all of the key data. The chip is down there at the bottom right. And I'm taking a look here with my magnifying glass. Couldn't quite see it, so I just used the reflection of the light off of the phone to make sure I can read the writing on the chip. And at this point I've determined which chip was on this circuit board, so that when I go through the programming phase, we program it via the right chip. And it's that third option there. It was chip 1N35H. Now I was looking at the contact points around the chip just to make sure that I would have good contact points. None of the contacts were worn off, just so that when I connect to it, I'm able to get a good connection. In the process now of connecting the programmer, making sure all of the connection points have good contact before I connect the connection cable itself. At this point, I'm confirming the chip within the software, entering programming mode. Before I actually start the programming process, or at least at the beginning of the process, the programmer will now scan the connection points just to make sure that we have a good connection on the board before programming is started. Alright, so at this point I was making sure all of my cables were connected, and right there on the programmer itself there's a section on there where I needed to read to make sure it was connected properly. We can see the programmer now is checking all of the pin connections. I believe on this particular board there are 8 connections, or maybe 7, and you can see all the connection points there, and it's telling me that there are 2 connection points that are bad, which you saw in red. Okay. All points should be green before starting to program. So at this point I'm removing the connector because I had 2 bad connections. I'm reseating the connector onto the board. And this video is a little long, guys, just because I have a lot of requests where some don't want me to chop it up. They want to see the entire process as opposed to a 3-minute clip of me just showing you that it's done. Showing you exactly how long the programming process takes. It's generally about 15 to 30 minutes, just depending. So I reseated the connection points, and now I'm rechecking the pins or all of the connection points again. And I see that now instead of 2, I only have 1 bad connection. So I'm going to remove the connector again, checking the board just to make sure that I don't have any crusties on there or any sort of green corrosion or anything. I'm reseating my connector. Just double checked all of the 8 connection points again, or is it 7? I'm not sure. And you see it lighting up red there. It's checking the connection points. And again, there was a bad connection on one of the points. I believe it was a D10 connection. So I'm wiping the board at this point, making sure that there isn't anything that's stopping a good connection. I'm reseating my connectors again. Once I've seated all of the connections, then I will pin down or tack down, screw down the connector board of my programmer. Now right now you see the red light. I'm scanning again to make sure that all points are connected properly. So as you can see here, now I have good connections on all of my points. Now I can continue with the programming process at this point. Now I just selected to read the chip, so it's now going to verify the chip that's on the board. The programmer is now making sure that I've selected the right programming sequence with the correct chip, and as you can see at the top and the bottom there, I'm not sure if you saw it really quick, but the programmer did verify that the actual chip on the board is reading the same as the chip that I selected for programming. So that's a good feature. You don't want to use software that's designed for a different chip on the wrong chip. So right now it's just reading the P flash, which takes some time here. It's probably a minute and a half to 2. What'll happen is it'll check the P flash, the D flash, and then the EEPROM data, which is all of the key data. So there's 3 flashes or files that the programmer will create. One primarily being for backup, just in case the programming fails. You can restore the module with the existing keys back to the chip instead of losing all of its data. When we do this, guys, you don't need to send us the original key. You can keep your original key. It's not necessary to create or program a key into your module, so we do not need it. However, if you would like the actual key blade cut, the metal emergency key that pulls out of your fob, one of two things. Either you can send us your original blade from your existing key, and then we can just copy it and cut the new one. Or if you can take a clear enough picture of your existing blade, you can just send us that picture, and based on whether or not the picture is a good picture, we can look at it, look at the picture itself, determine which cuts your key would need, and then we can cut your new blank key by picture. Okay, and it's guaranteed that it will fit or work your door lock. At this point, I'm just giving you a status. It's almost to the end here. It's about 90%. So just another few seconds until the P flash is read. Then it will quickly read the D flash and the EEPROM data. Okay, so right now it's just storing the P flash. It's updating or uploading the file to the server and to my phone here so that I can have a stored copy. It's creating a backup file. Now it's reading the EEPROM and D flash. This part is usually pretty quick. Alright, so it's now telling me that it's storing the original EEPROM and D flash data to my phone. Alright, now it's giving me the VIN information here, which you can see VIN ending in 8190. It's showing all of the key slots. There's 2 keys currently programmed into the vehicle, and the rest are, you see those numbers, all F's, which means that those are blank spaces. Alright, so now I just pulled off my connection to the board. I am now going to connect the key adapter that simulates ignition with the blank key, or the customer's blank key. It just read the key ID, okay, so that ended in E722. It's asking me which slot that is free that I want to program that key in. I just chose number 4. It's reading the key information, and now it will start writing the key data. Okay, so it's programming the key at this point, and this is where it would tell me whether or not that aftermarket key or any other key that I'm programming is going to fail to program into this module. Alright, now it's telling me to store the D flash and the EEPROM, which I have. Okay, at this point the programmer is telling me to connect the programmer back to the BCM. It's going to check the pins just to make sure I have a good connection. What you'll notice is I did not move the BCM at all, because I want to make sure I keep good connection. I only moved the programmer. I have a good connection at all connection points, so now I'm going to continue. And now it's showing me that I have a position key number 4 that I'm about to write to this module. I'm going to continue. So now what it's going to do is write the actual file that I just created in D flash to the actual module, which doesn't take that long at all, and then it'll create a backup file for me. It's written all the information. Now it's verifying the data on the chip just to confirm, and it says that adding the key is now complete. Okay, and to reinstall the BCM module to the vehicle, and the key is good to go. So that's the end of the programming stage. So we programmed all of the data onto that blank key. We locked the key now to this module. We wrote the key data to this module as slot number 4. So this is the 3rd key that's in this customer's module. There are 2 keys that apparently are missing. And then we just wrote the 4th key, or the 4th slot, which is the actual 3rd key. Now I'm putting the module back, the case back on the module. We're going to screw it back down. Alright, now at this point, before we ship the modules back, we confirm that the key is working, so I don't need the vehicle to confirm that the key is working. Okay, so this is to protect both the customer and us. What you don't want to do is send a module back, the customer installs it and says, hey, the key isn't working. So what we do is, because we're not on the vehicle, we have this tester. So now I'm going to test that key. Remember, we were all red at the beginning of this vehicle. Now I have the existing key, and I'm going to test the remote functions first to see if the BCM recognizes the key. Okay, now you saw where it lit up green there. See how it's flashing green? It's passing on the left hand side right there. Okay, so now this remote, the unlock, lock, and trunk button will work for this vehicle. Now what I'm going to do is I've just hit the test button and I'm simulating the ignition. So it's checking to see if this key will actually start the vehicle at this point. Remember at the beginning it was red and it failed. Now it's green, and I'll focus in here where it says that it has passed. So now this key will not only start the vehicle, the remote functions will work as well. Alright, so this key was successfully programmed. Now I'm going to package it up and send it right back out to the customer.